Okay, so this is lesson 5.4, quadratic relations in factored form, and this is video number 2. So here is a picture again of everything that I talked about in the last problem. So we've got our equation. This is a different equation. So we got y equals 1/2 x minus 6 x plus 2. We can see that if this says x minus 6, again, if that says x minus 6, I'm going to do this up here because this is factored. So 1/2 times x minus 6 times x plus 2 has to equal 0 to find the x-intercepts. You let y equal 0. So then that means that x minus 6 has to equal 0 or x plus 2 has to equal 0. So x has to equal 6 or x has to equal -2. So we've got one x-intercept here at -2 and we've got the other x-intercept here at 6. Now, something that wasn't in the matching activity was talking about this axis of symmetry. So here's the axis of symmetry. And the other thing that wasn't talked about in the matching activity is the vertex. We are going to look at the form that talks about the vertex. So like I said in the last video, there are 3 forms of the equation of a parabola. There's factored form, there's standard form, and then there's another form called vertex form. But we're not going to talk about that today. However, there is a relationship between factored form and being able to find the vertex. So this axis of symmetry, it is an imaginary line. It's not part of the parabola. It's not something that you actually would graph. If I said graph this parabola, you wouldn't graph the axis of symmetry. You could if you wanted to. I wouldn't mark it wrong. But so this is just an imaginary line that goes down the center of the parabola, and it's the line where the parabola is a mirror image of itself. So the distance from this point here on the x-axis to this x-intercept is the same as the distance from this point here on the x-axis to, so where the axis of symmetry and the x-axis meet, that point right there, that x-coordinate right there, that would be the x-coordinate of the vertex. So we know that the vertex is at the point 2 and something. Now clearly on this graph it's at -8, but what if you weren't looking at the graph of it? So how do we find that? All right, so we do this. We average, I don't think I left myself enough room. So for finding the vertex, step number 1, you average the zeros. So in this case, my zeros are x equals 6 and x equals -2. So you want to average those. Because the vertex is exactly in between your zeros, then it's in the middle. And to find the middle between two numbers, you average them. So you want to do 6 plus -2, or 6 minus 2 divided by 2. So 6 minus 2 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. And clearly we can see on the graph that that's at 2. So that is the x-coordinate of the vertex. And like with any relation, a linear relation, these quadratic relations, and any other relation you ever learn about, if you have the x-coordinate of a point, you simply substitute that number into the equation, and that will give you the y-coordinate of the point. So the y would equal, since the equation is 1/2 x minus 6 x plus 2, y equals 1/2 2 minus 6 and 2 plus 2, which equals 1/2 times -4 times +4. If you have the right number for the x-intercept, this kind of thing should always happen, where these two numbers are the same and they are the opposite sign of each other. Okay, so we have 4 and we have -4. So that should always happen. If you have the correct x-coordinate for the vertex, that this pattern should always happen. And if it doesn't happen, you've done something wrong somewhere. You don't have the right x coordinate. Okay, so this would be a half of -4 times 4, which is -16, which gives us -8. And we can see here on the graph that, yes, it definitely is -8. Okay, so that's how you find the vertex of when you know what the zeros are, or when the equation is in factored form. Again, this is factored form. So to find the vertex, number one, you average the zeros, and I guess I should have, let me see if I can do this. Ooh, average the zeros. Let me take this. No, it's not going to work for me. Sorry. Maybe this will work. Hold on. No. Okay. Stuck in here, I should have written step number 2, sub in the equation. Okay. All right, so that's finding the vertex. Now, the second thing would be to expand and simplify factored form, and that will find the y-intercept. So finding, standard form. And what you do is expand and simplify. Only one step. I mean, there's obviously more than one step to expanding and simplifying. So 1/2 x minus 6 x plus 2. Expand the bracket parts first, so leave the 1/2 out in front. X times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. -6 times x is a minus 6x. -6 times 2 is -12. Simplify what's inside that bracket, so x squared minus 4x minus 12. And now multiply everything by 1/2, so you get 1/2 x squared. 1/2 times 4 is minus 2x, and 1/2 times minus 12 is minus 6. So the y-intercept equals -6. 0, -6. Okay, so again, just to note, the a value in this case was 1/2. The a value is still 1/2. And this number here, the -6, actually comes from multiplying 1/2 times -6 times +2. That's where it came from, right? Because the minus 12 came from doing -6 times +2. It came from this multiplication. It stayed at -12 in the next line, and then it became -6 by multiplying it by a. So the y-intercept is always going to be a times r times s. No, a times minus r times minus s. So, okay. So there we go. That is the equation. Let me just go back and put this blue on here again. That would be y. So the equation in standard form is y equals 1/2 x squared minus 2x. Gives us the y-intercept of 0, -6. Again, if we don't need standard form, then to find the y-intercept, you simply let x equal 0. I'll go through this. So y equals 1/2 x minus 6 x plus 2. Let x equal 0. So that's 1/2, 0 minus 6 times 0 plus 2 equals 1/2 times -6 times 2 equals -6. The 2 and the 2 will cancel. Okay, so then the y-intercept again is 0, -6. And, sorry, back here at finding the vertex, so we have the x-coordinate of the vertex is equal to 2. And we have the y-coordinate of the vertex is equal to -8. So that means that the vertex is at 2, -8. All right, I'm going to do another example just like that. All right, so this time we have 0.5x times x minus 8. Well, that's kind of weird. So we have, I'm just going to write it again, y equals 0.5x times x minus 8. So either 0.5 equals 0, which it won't. I'm going to change this to a 0 here. So let y equals 0 to get the x-intercept. So either 0.5 equals 0, x equals 0, or x minus 8 equals 0. Those are the three things that are being multiplied here. So x equals 0 or x minus 8 equals 0. So there's nothing to solve on this one. X is equal to 0, and bring the 8 over to the other side, or x equals 8. So we can see there is an x-intercept right there. So when you just have an x and nothing is being added or subtracted to it, that means that one of your zeros or one of your x-intercepts is equal to 0. And then there's your x equals 8. Opposite sign, it said x plus, or it said x minus 8 in the bracket. So x equals 8 is the x-intercept. You don't have to go through all this. If you can see right from the equation, oh yeah, x equals 0 or x equals 8, that's fine with me. You don't have to do this line here where you let it all equal 0. I'm just showing you how that works. You can certainly do it. I'm not going to stop you from doing it, but you don't have to. Okay, so imagine we're not actually looking at this graph, so all we know is that the zeros are at 0 and 8. So for the vertex, we're going to average the zeros, so x equals 0 plus 8 divided by 2, and that's going to equal 4. So that's the x-coordinate of the vertex. And then for the y-coordinate of the vertex, we go back to the equation and substitute 4 in for x. See how I got 4 and negative 4 again? It doesn't always have to be the 4s, but it just, one is positive and one is negative. So 0.5 times 4 times negative 4 is equal to negative 8. So then the vertex in this case is at 4 and negative 8. And then standard form, just because that was the instruction. The instruction said, oh, sorry, there is no instruction. Okay, well, I'll tell you right now. The instructions are find the vertex and put it into standard form to find the y-intercept. This one, standard form, is pretty easy because 0.5x times x minus 8. You're basically taking, well, you can leave the 0.5 at the front. So I'm going to do x times x is x squared, x times minus 8 is minus 8x, or you could just multiply the 0.5x all through the bracket. So that's going to be 0.5 x squared minus 4x. Notice there's nothing here. There's nothing here at the end. Okay? The plus c part, remember, and these are all basically trinomials. There should be 3 terms in standard form. Any parabola should have 3 terms. In fact, they all technically have 3 terms. Sometimes you can only see 2 of them though, because that third one is 0. So then that means that the y-intercept is 0, 0, which we can see on the graph right here. It's crossing the y-axis at 0, so that makes sense. And again, just to show, for the y-intercept, you let x equal 0, which is going to get you y equals 0.5 times 0 minus 8, which is just equal to 0. So I really want standard form. I don't care if you don't have to do this if you don't want to. It's not wrong, but you don't have to do it. I'm just going to un-X that because it's not wrong, so I don't want you to think that it is. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video there. There's more. I have more examples to take a look at, and I'll be back.